Orion has just announced a big set of changes for their electricity prices, with huge impacts on Cantabrians. This includes a shift in off-peak power times, an increase in peak power prices, and a whole new type of cheap power that could save you loads of money. I'll take you through all the changes and help you figure out exactly what it means for you. Starting with a bit of background, Orion services the Christchurch/Banks Peninsula region, up to the Rakaia River and all the way to Arthur's Pass. If you live within this area, then your power is coming from Orion, and these changes will be big news for you when they kick in, starting the 1st of April. Let's start with the big news. Orion have completely changed their structure for volume charges and off-peak power prices compared to peak power. Peak power used to be defined as weekdays, between Monday to Friday and between 7 AM and 9 PM. During this time, Orion charged 9.4 cents per kilowatt hour. Outside of this time frame, whether that be at night between 9 PM and 7 AM, or any time on the weekends, they only charged 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour. But now the system is much more complicated. They've gone from having 2 different pricing charges to 5. There's a lot to go through with some of these options, so let's take it from the top. Weekend charges have increased from 1.8 cents to 3 cents. This price no longer affects night times during the week, only Saturdays and Sundays. Peak time is a tough one to figure out since there's technically 2 peak times. On Monday to Friday from 7 AM to 11 AM, and then again from 5 PM to 10 PM, you'll be charged 12 cents per kilowatt hour. This means that not only has the peak price increased by 2.5 cents, but the night rate kicks in an hour later, from 9 PM, and now it's starting at 10 PM. However, there is an upside, since in between those 2 peak periods, from 11 AM and 5 PM, the price has dropped to 7 cents. That means that while peak prices have gone up by 2.5 cents, this new midday period, known as a shoulder charge, is cheaper by that same amount. Not only does this apply between 11 AM and 5 PM, but also from 5 AM to 7 AM in relation to a new type of category that they've made. This is the first example of the big message of these changes. If you keep these new timings in mind when you use your power bills will hopefully drop compared to the old system. Time for off-peak, the replacement for the old night rates. This one comes into effect between 10 PM and 3 AM, dropping from the already low 1.8 cents a kilowatt hour to an even lower 0.6 cents. That's over 50% cheaper than it used to be. A lot of people have their hot water cylinders turn on at 9 PM at the moment to get the cheapest rate. But if you don't change your timer, then you'll get caught out with an hour of the new, super high peak rate. Make sure to take stock of how and when you're using your power, especially when it turns on at night, and make sure you now have them start at 10 PM instead of 9 PM to use this much lower rate. Or you can make use of an even better rate, the super off-peak category. This one kicks in anytime between 3 AM and 5 AM, including weekends, and costs nothing? That's right, Orion will charge you nothing between 3 AM and 5 AM any day of the week. That doesn't mean that the power is free necessarily, since you've still got whatever price your energy retailer charges you on top of Orion's prices, but that applies for all of these prices, still making this a pretty great deal. If you have an electric car, having a timer set up to turn on during this 2-hour window would be a great idea. Or if it takes longer than 2 hours to charge, start it in the last hour of the off-peak window and keep it going through the super off-peak. Again, the whole goal here is to get you thinking smarter about your power usage. These cheaper rates are quite nuanced and have lots of different ways to make use of them, so get thinking about how to make the best use of them. The final big change is the outright removal of low power factor charges, which used to be a hefty charge put onto retailers that put a lot of extra cost on top of their overheads. There's no replacement, the charge is just gone, which is pretty great to see for those retailers. There's a lot of reasons why Orion might be implementing these changes, but the most obvious one is shifting the usage of power across the day to normalize the load on the grid. By breaking everything down into more segmented categories and making people more conscious of how they use their power, it'll naturally shift power usage into new times as people make better use of these big changes. So with how this video has gone so far, you'd be forgiven in thinking that we were an electricity YouTube channel. But read the channel name, people, we're Sunshine Solar, so it's time to talk solar. Firstly, those peak and shoulder charges line up pretty nicely with peak solar times, meaning that you can make use of the sun's power instead of those higher peak rates. If you avoid those new peak charges altogether, then every other time of day during the week will get you cheaper power than you had before. If solar is filling that gap, then these changes are basically a net positive. Batteries are also becoming more useful with these changes, if you choose to use them right. Since those midday rates are cheaper than they used to be, you could lay off from using some of your solar power during the middle of the day and instead send some of that power to your battery. When those peak charges kick back in from 5 PM to 10 PM, that's when you can use that solar power stored in your battery, saving you from having to use those higher charges at all for grid power if you play your cards right. It's up to you to optimize how you use your power, and of course your power needs and solar generation will be unique to your home, but these changes are surprisingly positive. Remember, if you play your cards right and rejig your power usage routines, then you'll probably come out of this pretty well. And if you throw solar into the equation, then the benefits will only get better the way that I see it. Get in touch with Orion if you've got any in-depth questions about how these new changes will impact you. And if you want to know how solar could play a part in your new planning, head to our website for a free quote and to get in touch with some good experts.